Yeah, that's what this is all about. It's the panel, but then it's the connections that last for much longer than this time that we're together for the panel. So thank you for taking time to meet them. And so welcome everyone to today's Talent Lab Impact Series event, which is specifically for FIU interns. A lot of things happen in this room that support FIU's research mission, governmental relations priorities, but I think what's most important to me and really the whole team is what we can do specifically for our interns, which is really the most important thing that can happen here in DC. I'm very excited about today's panel, Life on the Hill, and because we will have three very unique vantage points on life on Capitol Hill in terms of career path and things of that nature. And the reason we'll have three unique vantage points is because of our three unique panelists here. Marcus, who is our alumnus, who is the digital director for the House Transportation Infrastructure Committee. Mimi Diez, who is the sustainability program manager for the architect of the Capitol. And our friend Guillermo, also FIU alumna, and our friend of FIU, Guillermo, who is the executive director of a fantastic organization, Pay Our Interns. And so I have some thoughts and questions and things, and then we'll see what conversation happens. But I'll start with Mimi, in that I missed this now famous moment in FIU DC history where my colleagues Chris and Carlos were walking around the Capitol doing what they do in governmental relations, and if I understand the story correctly, Mimi sees some FIU lapel pins and says,
Thank you from FIU so much.
So yeah, tell us some more about that background with FIU, your FIU experience, what your current role is, and what any progression between those two things.
Sure. So I'm a DC native. I was born and raised here in Northwest DC.
That is so rare.
I know. So it hurt my parents to have me leave and go to Miami, but we have lots of relatives there, so that worked out nice. But originally I went to FIU for sports medicine. They had a great program there that I was interested in. This was back in '98. And as I was there, I took these wonderful classes, anthropology, a lot of ecology courses, and I realized that that was something, advocacy and environmental studies was definitely for me. So I graduated in anthropology, came back up here, did my master's in global environmental policy at AU. And then just through meeting people and internships, I got into corporate social responsibility over at the EPA. And then from there progressed to the World Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank, the International Monetary Fund, all doing corporate sustainability. And I just found that my passion and my impact was not really wagging my finger from the outside in terms of advocacy, but also working within the institution to find change and to find process improvements and really speak their language. And I'm good with culture and understanding culture, and so that was really helpful. So I still go back to FIU as a great reference point. I still look for guidance to some of my professors, but then I also got this great position here at the Architect of the Capitol, and I also do sustainability. I'm the sustainability manager for the House office buildings, and I've been there 5 years. And my work there, sorry, I'm gonna keep talking, you invited me. What my work is really is working with our architects, our engineers at the AOC, our shops. We have lots of trades in our buildings to really reduce the environmental impact of our operations. So that's reducing our water, energy, waste management, recycling, alternative transportation, you name it, I can do it.
So Marcus, most folks here in the room today are currently interning. I know that our first interactions go back to a previous internship that you had applied for through programs that you were in the Global Learning Medallion program I was running at the time, ended up with an internship here in DC and are still in DC. So to that point, can you talk about your internship experience in DC and how that led to what you're doing now and what it is that you're doing now?
Yeah, so like he said, we actually got to meet or interacted a long time ago. But before that, I was actually in Hawaii interning in a congressional district office. And that's when I realized that I really loved this kind of work. And I decided it was time for me to come to DC So I applied to the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute, and through their process was placed with my home senator, Senator Chuck Schumer. And as a legislative intern, I was able to really learn the issues, learn what it's like working in a DC office, and see how different it was than back in Hawaii, where there I was really on the ground working with constituents. And in DC, as I'm sure most of you know, if you work in a DC office, you're gonna receive a lot of phone calls, you're gonna be answering a lot of phone calls, and you're probably doing it as an unpaid intern, or at least back then you were. Thanks to people like them, like him and his partner Carlos, that getting paid is a reality now for most interns on the Hill. But for me, it was really eye-opening because I finally realized what it meant, what my life story meant, and how I had the opportunity to really make a change and make a difference even at that level, taking on projects, working on memos, and really seeing that. And I think oftentimes we can overlook the fact that, oh, it's just like intern work, it's this memo or that memo, it's probably not important, but it is, because all of that is getting you ready for the next step. And to that next step is when I saw an email from Eric Feldman said, oh, Congressional Research Service, they're hiring paid internship or paid fellowships. So I applied, I let him know, and the person who actually helped coordinate my interview process and get me onboarded was another FIU alum. That worked out great, and it was supposed to be a 10-week fellowship that turned into an 8-month job. And from there, it was the perfect segue to my career now as the digital director for the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. So a lot to be thankful for, yeah.
And that current role consists of what, more or less?
Yeah, so in that role, I really help. I'm just one of 3 people in the communication shop for the majority staff. And there, we're really hoping to push an infrastructure package that is modern, that is bold and big, regardless of the outside factors that might stop us or hamper us from doing that. Our main priorities are aviation safety. We have the biggest, largest, most complex airspace in the world. So making sure that it's working efficiently and safely, water resources in the environment, making sure that every person, no matter where they are from, where they live, that they have access to clean and affordable water. Making sure that our water sources are free of pollution, or making that happen as best as we can. And then to your point of what you do, another big thing that we do is making sure that our federal buildings are using energy efficiently and sustainably, so working to make sure our buildings are resilient and sustainable for the long term. And then as well, emergency management, which might hit home for a lot of us back in Miami. FEMA, that's a lot of what we do as well. I'd be happy to answer any questions on any of those topics.
So Guillermo, speaking of unpaid internships, can you describe your internship experience from back then, and then tell everyone what you did as a result from that?
Yeah. So I guess it wasn't that long ago, but to be honest, it's not age me here. But no, I was an unpaid intern on the Hill for a member of Congress from Nevada, and it was a great experience. Those of you who have interned on the Hill know it's a foot in the door. It really is that starting point for your career in the Hill, whether it's as a staff assistant afterwards or anything like that. You really want to place yourself in an internship program and get started there. One of the things that I quickly recognized during my time as an unpaid intern, so I guess this was 2014, was very few people, and I go beyond interns here, but staffers, and members of Congress didn't really look like me. I'm brown, I'm Latino, and the reality is that most of my counterparts were white, and that to me, it was just kind of a thing that I was not alarmed by, but more like it was something that struck me. The individuals that did look like me were custodial or behind the kitchen, and while there's no issue with that at all, it was just something that I had questions in the back of my mind during the duration of my internship. And I was an unpaid intern. I attended school here in DC, so because of proximity, I could do it. I had housing back at school. I did school 2 times a week and interned 3 times a week, so it worked. I was able to afford to do it. But I also recognized that if it was not for me attending school in Washington, if I was anywhere else, it wouldn't have been feasible. You know, telling my parents, hey, I've got an unpaid internship on the Hill, can you foot the bill, was not an option for me. It's not an option for many people that look like me. You know, that's the best way to put it. And so a few years go on, and my counterpart, Carlos, who is the co-founder, and the two of us kind of sat down and chatted about what our internship experiences were like, and we recognized a similar drive. And that's when we launched Pay Our Interns as a social media campaign. We launched strictly to spread awareness on unpaid internships and how, you know, kind of the way people were feeling, you weren't alone. There actually were a lot of individuals that had the same financial and emotional hardships that one was facing, it's just we didn't talk about it. And shortly after that, we realized it was going to be more than just that. So we kind of kicked it into gear and focused on advocacy, and now we're a full-fledged nonprofit. Last year, we worked with Congress and we got $14 million allocated for just interns to get paid. Next year, we're hoping to kind of actually double that number. So, you know, we're really on this trajectory where now it's now more common to hear about paid internships on the Hill rather than unpaid, but also just the trend beyond that. It's actually more common now to hear about paid internships in general. And so, you know, I'm not saying we can take full credit for that, but we definitely kickstarted this awareness that I think people knew about, but no one wanted to chat about. So yeah, but so my Hill experience is kind of from the intern perspective, but also now on the advocacy component and what that's like.
Let's go back to that $14 million that you worked with Congress on. I mean, that's a bigger deal than I think you made it in there in terms of this is legislation that was passed.
Yeah,
Allocated
it's
$14 million.
It's the first time Congress ever allocated any amount of money to pay interns, and so it was definitely it was life-changing for thousands of individuals who were impacted by it. And the reality is, it's very difficult to kind of destroy these things. You know, they usually stay on, and if anything, we're going to always advocate for more. So yeah, I mean, it's a big deal. You know, I'm really happy and proud of the work that we've done, but we do it because the whole point here is to diversify the system. You know, we firmly believe that if we're able to provide equal opportunity to individuals of all backgrounds, then they can become staffers, and those staffers can become, you know, the managers of offices, and then maybe one day want to run for office. So the whole point is to really diversify the pipeline that's on the Hill right now. And I mean, if the 116th Congress is anything, it's diverse, you know, and so that's just an example of what we can achieve. Now that also, like, the intern class is probably one of the most diverse classes we've ever had.
I'll give you a break as I come back to the two of you after this, but you said the FIUDC Daily Double were an impact. You said that this will impact people, and it's our impact series. We're all about impact matters. So the question I'm really excited to ask you is, how do you and Carlos, your co-founder, realize that you could do what you did? Because there were thousands and thousands and thousands of unpaid interns for all of congressional history before you who including, I mean, some who had the privilege to not be impacted by that, some who struggled through it and did work, and none of whom changed that. How did you two realize that you could actually do this and make such a significant change?
I still think we ask ourselves the same question, to be honest. But I think it's important for all of you to also recognize that I'm not much older than any of you. I'm 24. And I also don't have a college degree. So most of you are already one-upping me. But the reality is that we all have advocacy within ourselves. So it's being able to identify an issue and actually working on it. You know, we got no's as answers so many times. You know, so many offices told us what you're doing is noble, but it's not going to happen. And we just kept going for it. You know, and to be honest, you know, for the first 2 years, this wasn't my full-time job. This was my side hustle. Like, this was something I did. I actually worked for FEMA, which is another story. But I worked for FEMA, that was, and on top of that, I did Pay Our Interns on the side. So I guess, like, my biggest thing is, don't ever let anyone tell you no. If anything, then put those no's away and just let it fuel you. Because I remember, like, when the legislation did pass, when $14 billion was passed for intern pay, I was like, well, where's that list of no's that I had? Like, what do I do with that? And it's like, you know, beyond the pride, it's rather now, it's like, I'm so much more content that it's actually going to impact individuals that, that are going to come after me. I was never going to be an intern again. This isn't something I was working for myself, but rather just individuals that looked like me, that, had the same story, had the same background. So I guess my piece of advice is take those no's and do something else with them.
So I want to turn back to the specific skills and interests of Mimi and Marcus, in that I think it's fair to say, correct me if I'm wrong, it was not solely I want to be a political operative that got you into your roles. You have a skill of and passion for communications and maybe sustainability. So Mimi, can you talk to us a little bit more about being in a non-political career in Congress, that particular one that applies a specific skill and interest of yours, sustainability? Did you ever think you would end up working for Congress with that role? Are there any just general observations you have about being a non-political person in Congress, or other ways that, regardless of that skill or interest, somebody could end up working on Capitol Hill?
Yeah, this I feel like this position, I did not expect to be working on Capitol Hill. And my family, I come from a long line of advocates and political advocates. My aunts went to prison. They were in prison in Cuba for going against the Castro regime. So we have a lot of advocacy in our family. And even now, like my mom is in Cuba now, leading a whole group of people there, so it's just, I have relatives who are politicians. I have a cousin who is a member of Congress. So for me, working on Capitol Hill, it's, I have to hold my tongue a lot. And we are an apolitical agency. So I have to keep things very neutral. And I think that makes me also a better professional, that I'm able to remove some of that, my personal issues away from what's happening around me, and make sure that we are providing the best facility services, and I'm doing the best I can in terms of my job. But interestingly enough, I've been, interested in municipal politics. I've been asked to run for mayor of my city. So those things are still of interest to me, but I try to keep it very separate from my line of work. So I do get approached very frequently by committees and members of Congress. They like to use the Architect of the Capitol as a platform for some of their bills or any legislation that's coming up. They like to show, what's happening in our backyard as they're discussing, certain legislation. And again, it's tough. It's tough to keep that separate, but we have to, as in terms of our agency. Does that seem to answer some of that question? And again, I'd love to divulge so much information to these committees. Like Science and Tech recently approached me and asked me more about the recycling industry as a whole, and they're looking at putting some information together for legislation, and can I help them provide research? And it killed me. I would love to have provided them so much information, but again, that's just not, you just have to find that balance. And I think that's something that's that's learned.
And that's what makes you more apolitical rather than bipartisan. Like you guys really just aren't together at all.
We don't meddle, and it depends. Whoever's in office, we give you the same exact service.
Yeah.
And I think that's, in this point of my career, it's something that I would have never have learned otherwise if I was not in this situation. Just that patience and that balance and understanding professionalism.
Speaking of the work that committees do, committees are coming to you and trying to get information. In terms of the committee that you work for, Marcus, Transportation and Infrastructure. Infrastructure is vitally important, and there's been a lot in recent weeks in the past month of infrastructure week and infrastructure bills. What are some of the hot topics in infrastructure, and with your role as a communicator, why is communicating about these issues to the public and your role as a communicator so important?
Well, I think to your point about impact and the series being about impact, the T&I committee is one of the largest in Congress, if not the largest. Some of our subcommittees are bigger than most committees in Congress. So we have about 36 members that are Democrats. Those are the ones that I work for. And they represent pretty much a huge population of this country, from New York to California to Iowa to Kansas to Miami. And so I think I I think most people understand that infrastructure is something that almost everybody can get behind. We know that our infrastructure is crumbling. We know that Americans cross efficient bridges every day. We know that our wastewater infrastructure was rated only a D plus just in 2017, but in 2013 it was rated a D. So in all of those years, it only went up a plus. Oh my gosh. I mean, the hot topics in infrastructure right now are, one, how are we going to make sure that our infrastructure is adapting to climate change? How are we going to make sure that we are reducing carbon emissions, adapting for the future? Right now, what has happened with infrastructure investment is that pretty much we just haven't done it in a robust way. So we do it little by little here and there, but by the time it's done, it's already too late and we need to invest in it again. It's already crumbling. And if you go across the country, there are places where people are getting sick because of the water. They're getting sick because of the wastewater, and it's really sad. So I think that obviously everyone had hopes that this year would be the year that we could get a really robust, big, and bold infrastructure package passed that addressed all of these things and more. And I think at least our committee, we're still hopeful, regardless of the events that have transpired over the last couple of months, that we can still make a lot of change. And I think that's the beauty of us for the first time in a really long time being in the majority. The chairman of my committee, I think it's his 32nd or 33rd year in Congress. So he likes to call himself the apprentice, who finally has the gavel. And so he's been learning. He served on every subcommittee of T&I as the ranking member of every subcommittee. Now he's finally the chairman, and he has a really important role along with House leadership in deciding where the future of this country goes as far as infrastructure, whether it's broadband or schools, water. It's still really, really important. If climate change, if we don't act on climate change, the Northeast Corridor will be under the water. It's the 5th largest economic region in the country. There's a lot of consequences for inaction, and I think that's been our goal this year, to really highlight what the cost of inaction is. It's not just our railroads, it's not just our buildings, it's also our workers. Protecting workers' rights, public health is a big thing for us. So I think those are really the hot topics. How are we going to address it?
Thank you. This question is for everyone, though it's somewhat inspired by this past spring was my first semester up here in Washington, and I saw a whole cohort of recent graduates like Marcus looking for jobs and applying for different things, and some landing in amazing roles like Marcus's, some that graduated a little bit after that search process still. So I'll start with him because I kind of was watching from afar and go through it, but you've all been in similar spots. What can you say, any thoughts regarding where to aim in terms of your career search? We see students that are sometimes resigned to, oh, well, I'm not getting anything at this level, so I'm getting a little lower. We know that they also sometimes hear from individuals that, oh, maybe that job is not something you're ready for quite yet. And how do you respond to where to look and what to know you're capable of?
Yeah, I think the best piece of advice that I ever got was to take everyone's piece of advice with a grain of salt, because different things work for different people. And for me, as somebody who did CHCI, and I was really committed, I was still, when I did CHCI, it's a paid internship program where they pay for your housing, your travel, and they place you in an office, so it's really great. And like Guillermo was saying, it's really big for people of color who might not have the same resources to be able to front rent for an apartment and not get paid, or, it's a huge resource. And so once I have this opportunity to come to DC and be paid and have housing, I told myself, like, this is really hard for other people like me, so I'm going to make sure that I make it work, and I'm going to stay at whatever, like, no matter what it takes, I'm going to stay. So I decided to take online classes. I was supposed to graduate right now, like in May, but because I knew that I needed to make sure that my graduation aligned with the start of the new Congress, I took tons of classes, probably more than I really should have for mental health reasons. But I think people told me while I was searching, and I was that intern who I had not graduated, but I was still applying to every single job that I saw because I didn't believe that you need a college degree to make an impact. When people told me, just wait until you get your college degree to apply for the job because you're just wasting your time. Two, people told me, if you're gonna apply for the most entry-level position because you're just not gonna get there. And there were a lot of times where I almost listened
Who
to
are
them.
you talking to?
Yeah, it's a lot of people who I really looked up to as well. So I think, and it's not a bad thing. I think like they're giving you their piece of advice for like what worked for them. But for me, I had a really different plan for myself, and I was determined to reach it regardless of what I had to do. So I went on probably over 45 interviews. 44 of those told me no. The 45th one is the job that I have now. So now I'm a digital director. It was not really an entry-level position, especially not for a committee. So I would say, like, just know what you're capable of. I saw the responsibilities of the job, and I knew that I could do every single one of them and probably do them better than the next person. So why not apply? I think a lot of times people of color and people who come from marginalized groups often feel like that imposter syndrome, like they're not good enough, or that there's probably someone else who's more qualified. But we have to shake that off and know that we're probably the best person for that job. And look where it's gotten. So,
Yeah.
For all of us, really.
So I think aim high. Don't underestimate yourself at all. I think women in particular tend to go a little too low, even if they have a master's or a bachelor's or 5 years of experience. They tend to look at the position description and want to make sure that they match every single bullet point. Whereas men might only have 5 of those bullet points in terms of requirements or experience, but they still apply regardless. So don't sell yourself short. Aim high. If the position interests you and you only have 50% of the requirements, still apply. Most cases, the folks that are hiring really don't know what they want yet. They know that they need somebody, but they don't know what skill set you're going to be bringing to the table. And so they don't really know what that means. So you have to sell it to them. I had a great student intern. We also pay our interns, by the way. AOC pays our interns. So we had a great student intern, and she was an accountant graduate, and she was also doing an accounting internship, and she realized how much she hated accounting. When she was actually doing the internship and physically in the office with the culture, with the project, she's like, is this it? Is this what accounting looks like? And she was stunned that that's not, in theory, in her classes, she just loved it, was very passionate, but in practice, she was like, I can't do this for the next 20, 30 years. 40 years, oh my God. So my suggestion is, go on Indeed.com, go on some of these, search engines and type in some of those positions that you are so excited about and see what comes out. It'll show you what the salary range is, it'll show you what those positions look like, what those day-to-day activities are, and it gives you just some more of a shape to what this passion is for you. Shadow some of these people you meet, ask them to go and meet with them, but really aim high, don't undersell yourself. Because I just hate hearing people who are like, you're not gonna get it, don't even bother. It pains me to hear that.
That's how it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo that, to be honest. I don't have a college degree. I also am the co-founder of an organization. Like, is that gonna happen to everyone? No, but it can. And that's the point of this. Like, I mean, well, let's be frank here. The day I'd like to leave pay our interns, what kind of job am I gonna be looking for? I'm not gonna be looking for entry level, and I'm not gonna care if someone requires me to have a master's degree. I know what I'm capable of, and you need to know what you're capable of. And most of the time, we need to prove ourselves, especially those of us who are people of color, especially women. Too often, and this is women in particular, we apologize, and we shouldn't be doing that. don't apologize for applying to something because you think you can do it, but someone else said, no, you can't. If you think you can do it, there's no reason why you shouldn't apply. You know, my piece of advice to you is forget what people are telling you. Learn what you're capable of. Teach yourself what you need to do. I can't even, if you would have told me 3 years ago when I was just first starting the whole parent idea that I'd be here where I am now, I would have been like, okay, cool, like let me go back to work. But like, I mean, a lot of the skill that even as a co-founder and as, you know, a director of an organization, you self-learn, you really self-teach yourself. And you know, to me, it's like, I don't really know if I ever want to leave my position and help hire my replacement. If my replacement's going to have 15 or 20 years of experience in the nonprofit world and a master's degree, I don't really think I care about that. What I'm going to care about is someone who's passionate and someone who actually can picture themselves doing this and taking this to the next level. And to me, that doesn't usually mean that you fit a cookie cutter requirement. Cookie cutter requirements to me are, they're just like a base level, but like not even, you know, like you really should just accept your own challenges and don't really let people deter you from doing something you think you can or can't do. Because if I would have done that, pairings would not have existed. The amount of times we were told no by members of Congress, by presidential candidates now, was frequent. So like, you know, you really have to just take what people say with a grain of salt and use those no's to fuel you and figure out your path on your own. Don't let someone else determine it for you.
I'd love to turn it over for some conversation now. If any of you have questions, please introduce yourself in terms of where you're interning, if you're interning or working in a passion area, so our panelists get to know a little about you as well. Any questions? Okay. We'll use this for recording purposes and
Good evening, everyone. I'm Fabian. I'm interning for Senator Rubio. My passion is entertaining people. So when did you guys figure out that this was your passion? And why this? And why? Because I want to travel and entertain everyone. So when did you figure out this is this and not something you thought of when you were 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10?
I don't know, I feel like for me, I keep learning my passion almost every day. Like something, I'm so ADD that I'm like, oh my God, that's so amazing. Like I want to do wine tasting. You know, like I feel like I learn my passion and, you know, almost weekly I find something else that's exciting and I just have to dabble in it, make sure that I you know, feel comfortable with it. But in terms of sustainability, I just saw that there was a gap. And I felt that I could definitely use, you know, I'm a Spanish speaker, I'm from the DC area. I mean, I know what these organizations, what they're about, and I understood their concept, but they just had a gap. They did not know how to get there in terms of, you know, that roadmap to making themselves a green institution. And so I felt like every time I accomplished and I finished a project, it just kept fueling me for that next step. So I feel like it's, I found my passion young for, you know, for the environment and for advocacy, but I found that I could really morph it into something else, into my career, and I meet new people, and oh my God, like you meet new people, you find out what they're doing, and then you get excited, you intern, you get a job there, and it might take you to something else. So I feel like if you don't want to put blinders on either about, you have to stay on the straight and narrow with your passion, you know, explore, dabble, take some risks. I feel like you'll definitely find more passions than you were intending to.
I guess I'll go. For me, I was born in the Bronx, New York. Just to be
Not the other
clear,
Bronx?
not the other one. And if there is, does it matter? I don't know. But really, growing up there, I was a young kid, but my mom really made me understand the fundamental issues that people in our community faced every single day. And from the Bronx, we moved to Chicago. I saw the same things there. From there, we moved to Miami. Very similar things there as well. After Miami, we moved to South Carolina, a town of 13,000 people. more trees than people, more everything than people, probably more McDonald's than people. But I also, living in South Carolina taught me like the issues that people in the Bronx face and Chicago face really aren't that different than the issues that people in rural Seneca, South Carolina face. How we approach it and how we want to fix it might be different, but there's definitely a way to bring all of these communities together and work towards coming up with solutions, making sure that our communities are better off. And so having that experience at a really young age, having lived in a lot of different places, I felt like I could be a really good voice to bring these things together. And I'm still young, I'm 22 years old, I just turned 22 last week, but
Wow, I'm so old compared to you guys.
but so I mean, like my passion,
I'm 25.
obviously,
I'm 25.
you look it for sure. Serious. But I think my passion obviously is like doing good, helping come up with solutions that are gonna uplift marginalized communities that have historically been left behind. But how I do that is still to be seen. I have no idea. I think what I'm doing now is a good start, but I think, like you said, there's always something else that you're like, wow, that's really good. And maybe that'll be it for me, you know?
My passion stems from learning how to use my voice to amplify others. And I think that the moment I really figured that out, I've always been kind of an extrovert. Like I've always been the individual that, even in high school, I did theater and public speaking, I competitively, and, you know, I was one of those weird kids. But the point being, I always listened to what people had to say and the issues that people face. And I always felt that I could help in one way or another. And I think that it still is true to with the work that I'm doing now and hopefully with the work that I'll continue to do. But I also recognize though that my passion is fueled by others. Like my passion isn't really like something I do on my own, but rather like, again, helping amplify other people's voices. Like I enjoy storytelling. I enjoy giving a voice to those who feel like they don't have one when they do. And it's teaching them how to find that voice.
Who else?
I'm actually curious, Fabian, so you said you like to entertain people. So when you were talking about passion and entertainment, were you being literal in terms
Literally
of?
entertaining.
So talk to me more about that.
If I can have a job where I could just make somebody smile, that's the best. Whether it's working at a theme park in Walt Disney World, whether it's acting, whether it's dancing, whether if it's a smile, then I'm entertaining. So whatever it's, if I can flip this cup and it's a land and it's entertaining you, then that's what I want to do.
Yeah, people skills, I think, is the biggest. I work with a bunch of engineers, and I'm sorry, engineers, but you know,
People skills are lacking there.
people skills are lacking. And you know, when we're looking at collaboration, when we need to really fix a problem and problem solve together as a team, and they can't because their social skills not there, you know, they can't be jovial and just find humor in some of those things, you know.
But then there's also the politician that has too much people skills and talks too much and actually doesn't perform that well. So it's one of those things where you gotta really find that middle ground. You know, if you're gonna be a personable individual, then prove yourself in another way. You know, I think that's definitely their spectrums.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of, please.
Hi, I'm Gabriela De Silva. I am interning with the Climate Institute. I just have a question for all of you. What was the most challenging part in starting the positions that you are in right now?
I guess I can go. Working on a committee is a lot different than working in a personal office. On a committee, we have a certain like jurisdiction that we focus on. So like I mentioned earlier, our committee focuses on aviation, economic development, and public buildings, things I had no idea about before I started. As someone from the Bronx, I knew transportation infrastructure is really important to people's livelihoods, connected to everything that we do. But really learning the intricacies, the history behind it, the history of inaction, how legislation has stopped a lot of investment from happening and has left people behind, was definitely the hardest part, because on day one, I'm expected to be a voice for and help these 36 members with their messaging and helping them communicate to their constituents about the work that we're doing and why it's so important to them. So I mean, even you guys saw me, like I have this paper. It's like a continuous learning. You're continuously learning, regardless. But I think that's definitely the hardest part when you're going into something that requires you to kind of almost be an expert and really know these issues in and out, front and back. Those first 3 months were brutal for sure. I'm just passing that now, so I feel like now I have my life back and I'm able to like do things after work. But the first 3 months, it was like going home and continuing my reading, continuing everything until I felt like I could really talk about these things.
I think the hardest, being a female and usually in a male-dominant environment, I've always had that imposter syndrome as well. The suggestions of taking up space, doing like the superwoman pose, I mean, those things are real and they work. They really work. And I think also, I'm a mom of 3. I went through graduate school when I was pregnant. I was a consultant, right? And, I really wanted a family. I wanted to make it work. So finding that balance for me was such a challenge because I was working with many men who did not need to get home in time or didn't have to worry. They weren't maybe not as engaged. They might have had a partner that was a little bit more engaged at the home front. So again, finding that balance to make sure that I was still, making sure that my projects were being complete and I look like a superstar because I'm competitive. But also making sure that I had some of me at the end of the day and that I had time for my people. So I think there's several things going on, but definitely balance for me was a challenge.
Yeah, I guess the biggest challenge I face all the time is imposter syndrome, to be honest. Far too often, I am the only Latino in the room. And at first, I would just get upset about it. But then I recognized that I had the job to remind everyone that I was the only Latino in the room. And to remind individuals the importance of bringing in diverse voices and stuff. So I mean, one of the biggest challenges I guess I had was just not getting angry at situations, but then realizing it was repetitive. Like it was just not one place. Like it was time and time again, different agency, different office, and you were just constantly reminded that you're just different, And so I think it's acknowledging the fact that you're different, but also paving the way for people that look like you is so important. In our community, it's so important to ensure that you're not tearing down that ladder you just came up, you're reinforcing it. And you do that by helping other people get up. And you do that by ensuring that other people have these opportunities to take advantage of, I remember so many times where I had questioned if my name was Tom, how much easier it would have been to raise $500,000 than it is because my name is Guillermo. I really questioned that, and I still do. And it's just something that we face as individuals, especially those of us who are from different backgrounds and those of us who don't have connections. Making our own path is like so important, but challenging yourself to ensure that other people follow is just as important.
I feel like embracing, the whole of embracing that part of yourself, and not hiding that part of yourself in the workplace is so important. You can't hide it, and I didn't want to hide it, and I felt like it made me a stronger employee and a better teammate.
And you do it with like even the smallest thing where, like, for example, like I introduce myself as Guillermo. Like I don't need to say my name is Guillermo anymore. I'm Guillermo. That's who I am. And if you don't want to introduce myself that way, that's on you. But even that small factor is just a big change for me as an individual because it reminds me where I come from. It reminds me of my roots. Because too often, no one in the room is going to have that. And it's just, it's a moment where you really are sticking with someone and reminding them that there aren't enough people that sound like my name, or there aren't enough people that look like me and stuff like that. And that's really important.
I want to make sure to highlight what some of you all are doing and working on and create a conversation around topics, not just the career advice students. So if you don't mind putting on the spot in terms of Climate Institute, since that's relevant to at least two of the panelists up here, but really everyone, can you share a little more about what you're doing so far and what the Climate Institute's main priorities are?
Saving them from South Florida, as we all are. We're working on like educational projects for South Florida as far as sea level rise and climate change. So we're working on, like, I can't say them because we're still in the process of talking to donors and things like that. But we're trying to, it's a sort of like a museum, but we're trying to do a concept of educational climate change type things and create a community around it in which not only are we teaching sustainability and threats of climate change, but we're teaching sustainable economy within communities. So those things that they're building will help sustain the community, the economy, create jobs, things like that. So they're trying to create more things like that, especially in South Florida, and obviously to educate the public as well.
And then, so I happen to know also a little bit about Santiago's organization, which takes all of that, and I think adds in the third component, or the other component you're talking about here in terms of marginalized communities and things of that nature, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm currently working at it's an environmental justice group that advocates for low-income communities and people of color, specifically in the New York region. Right now I'm working on policy and specifically how environmental justice members, so different organizations across the country, and how they play a part in environmental justice. So I'm looking at different policies that their organizations are working on, as well as compiling a brief on like the Green New Deal, its history and its political implications, because it's still not a concrete policy. So we want to shape the conversation and kind of like reorient it towards an environmental justice scope. Yeah. So.
What else? There can be more questions. I'm shutting down questions. Also, if you want to share about your work, if you just want to generally say where you stand in terms of what you're trying to figure out while you're here, future path-wise, I'm glad to have this conversation.
Yeah, I'm curious, like, what your biggest challenges are moving forward into your career
Yeah,
path.
I hate to ask this, but I actually really want to. Does everyone here identify as Latino or African American? Like, can you raise your hand if you do? So the majority of you, that's awesome. Okay, great. And my intern is white, so it's okay. Like, if you're white, don't worry about it.
You could be Argentinian, you know?
That's
Hey.
true. My mom's from Chilean. So it's true. No, there are marginalized communities in every race. I speak very heavily on people of color simply because that's the experience I've gone through, the experience that I have as an individual who is a person of color. And truthfully, I mean, just like my own upbringing, I was raised in a predominantly white neighborhood. I went to a private school where I was like one of the only Latinos there. And that's just like the life that I lived. And when I went to college, again, my counterparts were mainly white. But it's the point that, I didn't relate to my community until I started the work that I did. It wasn't until I got involved in government that I even thought twice about my community, which is like so weird. It wasn't until I guess I grew up that I recognized the importance of really bringing your community into the conversation.
So we have answered Amy's question about a challenge.
So my name is Stephanie. Like I said earlier, I just graduated I did communications, public relations track, and then I'm interning at the Bureau of Land Management now with the Department of Interior. I'm part of their digital media team, so it's kind of public affairs, and I mainly do a lot of social media and writing blog posts for, internal communications within the department. But my biggest challenge is I feel like it's a cross between like personal and professional, and now that I graduated, trying to figure out what I want to do. And I feel like I took the first step in coming here and taking an internship away from Miami because I never lived away from home. So that alone I feel like is a personal step forward. And then professionally, public relations was my track, but I'm not really married to that. I'm keeping an open mind because, I'm not sure what I want to do. And so I think like the biggest challenge for me is just trying to figure that out. And I feel like my internship now is, it's good and I'm learning a lot. I don't know that it's necessarily for me, but it has me interested in maybe other areas of government because I know that they're not all the same and where I'm at is very specific and functions differently and deals with different people and stuff like that. So my biggest challenge is I guess trying to learn about the different opportunities, see what may work for me and what like my skill set would be good for and some of my interests are nonprofits and gender equality and stuff like that. And I know Bureau of Land Management is kind of like way off from that, but yeah, it's a start. So I guess my biggest challenge is just kind of like processing of all the opportunities that DC has to offer and trying to figure out the next step because the summer is flying by and, I'm just wondering what's the next step? What do I do? Do I stay? Do I go back home? Do I, it's just.
So I would think like if you are not applying to both here and to Miami, you're not doing enough. And because I feel like you gotta speed date this thing. Like you need to find out, like, do you like some of these organizations here? Are they offering you? Are they enticing you? Are they gonna give you that path forward that you're looking for? And also try to apply to places back home because you might find that there's some great spots back home that you would have never had suspected. I love DC, so represent on DC, I want you to stay. And we don't get enough people from FIU coming up north. DC has so much to offer and just a vast network of amazing people. What?
I said it's too cold.
Get a jacket.
Southeast and cozy.
So definitely, get that spreadsheet and fill it up with, just track all the positions that you're applying to. And, definitely I want to hear that you're doing 40 applications, that you're doing 60. I literally did 60 applications before I got this architect of the Capitol position. So you want to be able to put everything out there and speed date, and you want to, you know what I mean? Like just you want to find out what those organizations are going to offer you because that will just help you formulate and just take the stress off of where you're going to land. And also network with some of your colleagues. They will know so many people here in the area. And if you tell them, and don't feel ashamed about saying, hey, look, I'm interested in going somewhere else other than the Bureau of Land Management. Like, say, this is what I'm excited about. Like, do you know any organizations around here, X, Y, and Z? Do you know anybody at this particular place? Because they'd be happy to connect you with those folks.
I'll piggyback off of that. It's the one thing I told Nate when he first started here. He came in from Kansas for this internship. I'm not saying like you have to stay in Washington, but if there's anything that I want our interns to lead with, it's with a LinkedIn that literally went from 0 to 100. Like you need to network the shit out of this. Like you need to spend you should be at 1 or 2 events every week. There's no reason for you not to be.
That's it.
And more, but that's the bare
volunteering.
And if you don't have a business card, maybe make one for yourself. That doesn't hurt. But also you should have a pile of business cards. You really should. And follow up with those people. Look, this is my big thing though. If you're gonna connect with me on LinkedIn, tell me where you met me. That's my biggest thing because then it makes it a little more personal. I have so many people who try to connect with me on LinkedIn. If I can't put your face to your name, it's not going to work for me. But it's my piece of advice to you. It's meet people, network with them, have a conversation with them, and then network with them afterwards on LinkedIn. And then don't hesitate to ask someone out for coffee.
Oh my God, they love coffee here. They love it.
First of all, we all want an excuse to get coffee. But the other thing is that cup of coffee could lead to something. I had a cup of coffee with someone who led to my first $50,000 check. You never know what that could lead to. Literally you have no idea what a cup of coffee is.
You're gonna drink 4 cups of coffee in a day just taking people out on coffee dates, but it is so worth it because they might not have something that'll kind of push you in that path that you're looking for, but they'll know 10 other people.
And to be honest, and I'm gonna be frank with you, I'm gonna challenge you here because you have to remember that you are in a space that few aren't. You know what I mean? Like, think about how many of your friends aren't here right now. So you have this unique opportunity to really put yourself aside and figure out what you want to do while you're here. So you have to figure out, okay, like I want to meet X, Y, and Z who are related to this. But figure out how to do that, you know, and remind yourself of that one time that you don't want to go to this happy hour, like because you're tired or something. Remind yourself, like, I'm leaving in 8 weeks. You know, like what if this could change it? Like, you know, really push yourself to the limit and recognize that you're in a spot that some people aren't in, and take advantage of that.
Thank you.
I just really want to go based off what you're saying with the networking and connecting, because that's all we've always get told here since we got here. But I think that's like, for me personally, I'm sure for a lot of people also, like to network is a challenge.
Mhm.
It's also a personality thing. For
Absolutely.
me, like I'll panic, you know, and it's like, we don't want to feel like we're wasting someone's time, you know, because it is your time, you know, and I think, you know, like if you guys have like any suggestions when it comes up, because for me, like the CEO at my company, I work for Partners of the Americas, he asked me to go for happy hour and I panicked and I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. And now I regret it. But, you know, like it's just, and a lot of people that we've been talking with the program at TWC, you know, a lot of people have that same issue. And I don't know, it's like if you have any tips or anything when it comes to networking, really.
I think for me, when I first got to DC, I was really shocked that I felt the same way that you did, because my whole life I felt like, oh, I'm really good at like making friends and talking to people, and then suddenly I'm in a room with like 20 other interns and one person up at the front that everybody wants to talk to, and suddenly I'm like, oh, okay, whatever, I'm just gonna go home. And it's like, one, partly because I didn't want to compete with them, probably because I was scared that like I didn't have anything valuable to say, I didn't know what to talk about or like what things you even bring up. And I had this roommate back when I had this like whole issue, and he told me, he was like, literally, if you don't do this, like you're not gonna get anywhere. Like you need to wake up tomorrow and be good at it, period. And I woke up the next day and I asked all these people to coffees, and they were very awkward in the beginning, but I think like after you realize like that's just the name of the game here, it's gonna feel natural eventually. The reason why it feels so weird is because we've never had to interact with people on such a transactional level. Like, hi, this is what I can give you, what can you give me? And I think the number one tip though is to like maybe not even talk about yourself so much, but ask other people
Oh
about
yeah,
them.
be a listener.
Like be a listener, because
love
people
talking.
love talking
Yeah.
about themselves.
We love
People
talking about ourselves. We're full of ourselves.
You know, so I think like if you can just have someone answering your questions, like that's it. What I would do, because I was so nervous, is like I would research all of these people, like their histories. It's probably really weird, but I would like already go in knowing the answers to the questions, and it was just kind of like a trial run. Like how can I seem interested and like engage and like ask questions that will lead me to them giving me this answer, and like going from there. It's it's a game, and you got to play it like that.
But if
Right,
I mean, I feel the same way. If happy hours aren't your thing, find something else. I went to great lectures and workshops. There's so many all over DC. You know, even on Capitol Hill, they have all sorts of these are public seminars and workshops that you can go to, Eventbrite, and you know, find meetups. You know, you can find those ways to network at a level that feels comfortable for you. But I think a good rule is just like when you're setting up like a coffee or like a, you know, an informational type of a networking meeting, is give them a date to work on. Don't just say, hey, you want to meet up? They're like, yeah. You know, you want to first throw out a date, especially when people are contacting me. They're saying, if you tell me, hey, are you available next Monday at 10? I'll be like, actually, I am. Let's do it. But if you just say, hey, you want to meet up, then you have to wait for them to respond. There's just all this back and forth. Just throw something out there, and you know they'll definitely respond. But if coffee also is, tea is fine.
You don't need to drink anything.
You don't have to drink anything. I've actually done one just walking around the block. Like people love to get out of their office and their desk and talk about themselves. I networked with this great guy over at the State Department, and you know, we were like, let's just go for a walk, 30-minute walk. It was great. And it just, you know, they just talk and talk. So again, find that groove for you if that, that maybe that happy hour or whatever just didn't work out for you. But definitely throw out a day and a time.
I just think it's important to recognize I still get nervous and networking. And at this point, like, I mean, at this point it's like weird. Like, why would I get nervous about this? But find what's comfortable for you. And if the other thing too is like, you want to make sure that the other person doesn't feel like they're wasting their time. And the ways to do that is to, follow up. Also, like, do your research ahead of time, like, show that you have invested a little bit of time, of your time, into their time, because this is their time that they're giving you, and foster that relationship. I mean, the first time you meet, so I remember the first time I met Eric. Like, the first time I met Eric, he showed me around here, and this is probably my 6th time here, and we have a great relationship now. And it's just one of those things where you don't know, who you can maintain a relationship with, and it's normally the people that you network with on purpose that you'll be able to maintain such great relationships with them, and unique ways of doing it too. I mean, I've had members of Congress who I needed to talk to, and they're like, "Oh, I'm running to a meeting," and I'm like, "I'll walk you to that meeting. Let's chat on your way there." And it's like little things like that. Literally, you can actually solidify relationships with people, but also doing things that I think are just like not the norm is okay too. Like, if you want to. If you want to do anything besides coffee or anything like that, just bring it up. But you never really know what that cup of coffee or what that walk will do. Like, I mean, it really can be life-changing for some people. And I think some of us know that. Some of us know that some of the examples that we've had, like, you're always like 2 or 3 degrees separated from someone that you need to talk to. You really, really are. Like, especially in the city, like, you're probably 1 degree away from someone you need to talk to. Like, it's crazy.
So I'm not a golfer, and many people connect over golf or through other stuff. I mean, I connected a lot through running. I joined several running clubs, and I've met excellent people and networked jobs that way as well. So again, find that way, because it could be just so unique, other than just a happy hour if you're not comfortable with that.
Thank you.
Now, I'm not gonna, because I want to jump in on this one too, I think, as again, just 6-month in DC myself, because I totally identify the fact that not just since you've been here, but our whole lives, we're told network. And at some point, at what point is that true, and at what point is that just what people know to say when they're asked for advice? And here in DC, it's absolutely, I think, more true than back in Miami, even in many other parts of the country, for your own success, but also because there are so many interesting people to meet that are doing so many different things. So I think more than most cities here, you're gonna have people from different places, working on different types of work, passionate about different issues. And even if you don't view it as your own career success, which is part of it, why pass up the opportunity to know such interesting people and possibly become, friends with them too? Like, I really like knowing these people up here, both for our professional relationship and also just knowing them, being inspired by them and what they do, in more than just a transactional way. Some of that we're transactional. There's some people to be that, but sometimes.
And that word can be scary. I think that I remember coming here and being told, DC is a transactional city. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say it's not. It absolutely is. The city is very transactional, but you can make it what it is. There's no need for you to make it seem like this. It's only transaction when you hang out with someone. It doesn't have to be.
Exactly. I told Carlos the other day, my boss, that if I knew before getting this job how much I'd be out at night going to different things and representing FIU at work and this and that, I don't know that I would have been as interested. And I say that openly and honestly because now that I'm here and doing it, I see that it's doable for someone who didn't think that for similar, like I'm an introverted person who has worked really, really hard for the past decade to be able to be a little less introverted. But it's really, really scary. And I want to be honest about that in this situation based on your question. Now that I'm here and doing it, it's super interesting to be at different things and learning about different topics and meeting different people on a really regular basis. And
when I think it was Guillermo that said 1 or 2 things a night, that was you that said 1 or 2 things
Oh, week
a
at
week.
least, yeah. At least.
I really say that's it because sometimes it's a lot more than that. I mean, people in this room have been 2 things tonight already, for better or for worse.
I have weeks where it's like I go home
Just-
to level.
Even if it's not a natural thing to walk into from other cities, especially Miami, but to the extent that you can get comfortable, just do it. I was gonna say the same thing as all 3 of them about if the big group scene is not your scene. They have great other suggestions, but I'm gonna challenge that because I'm not someone comfortable in big group scenes. Challenge yourself and do them sometimes anyway. Even if you have to leave after meeting 1 new person you've never met before, whether that person's of any interest to you or not, if you just walk in and say, I'm going to meet 1 person that I have this total stranger and talk to them and leave, and the next time it's 2 people, and the next time it's 3 people, that never has to become your main strategy as opposed to the more one-on-one stuff, which probably is more valuable time anyway.
So I
Just challenge yourself.
actually got a great bit of advice at a networking event is if you don't know anybody there and you're a little nervous and you're just like, I don't really want to be here, is to just act like you're hosting it. Because when you act like you're hosting it, you're like, hey, how are you? This is great. What's your name? And you just start to, and I do it all the time, and it actually works. And people are like, oh, so have you come to this salon? No, it's my first time. So you start to meet people, but if you act like you're hosting it, just kind of changes your perspective versus you kind of coming in timidly, just scared of everybody else.
And I guess the last thing on that front is, in terms of hearing about things, we put as many non-FIU things in the newsletter that you're all getting, but there's also tons more out there. A piece of advice I've been looking for a venue to impart is every event has some sort of niche topic or interest or advocacy cause or something like that. You don't really need to be an expert on that or know anything about it or be part of that field to go.
You can just go.
Yeah. And unless it explicitly says like it's ticketed and it's sold out or something like that, you could probably get in. Because most of these seats are probably, even then, but I'm not gonna say that and then someone goes and, or something. But most things you can go to without any sort of permission. RSVP lists are normally arbitrary at best, that they might not even looking at who's RSVP. And quickly Google organization, this organization's whatever, and then go just talk to people because you don't need to put up barriers to going to things. There's stuff to do. I think with that, should there be any networking that occurs in this room outside of the group setting, we've been chatting for an hour. I'm going to conclude it here. I'm going to thank our panelists for being here after work on a busy day or after hanging out with each other. Thank all of you for being here, but also opening up with those questions and comments. Thank you all.
We should do coffee.